So, welcome all to the third edition of Speakeasy. Um, really happy to be here, of course, with all of you again. And I have, of course, again, a nice lineup of speakers for you. And before I dive into that, I want to give you a little heads up what this is. What is Speakeasy and why did I start this? Speakeasy is the digital hideaway where we share stories and connect creatives. So this event, this conference is basically for all ages, levels, and topics. Not only the people who are watching the stream, but also people who are actually speaking. Because what I wanted is having a conference for everyone, but of course everyone within the creative industry. So we have all kind of topics from photography to AI and from product design to videography or illustration. So we try to hit on all topics in every edition. And again, I have lots of nice speakers for all of you from everywhere in the world, which is really nice. So with different time zones. And to sum it up, this is the third edition, like I said. We are on the 25th of September, and we're starting 7 p.m. Of course, a few minutes later, like every time. And we go on till 8:30. I say 8 p.m. That's a bit too optimistic. 8:30. I hope to do that. And we have 7 speakers today. If you saw 8 speakers a few weeks back, that's because we had one cancellation of Gio. He was from HP. But he sadly had to cancel because of work meetings. So we have 7 speakers, but nonetheless, these are really awesome. And they all will speak between the 10 and 15 minutes today. We have, I think, 5 nationalities, which is awesome in 7 speakers. And the 4th edition, I still have to think about the date, and also we'll refine the concept a bit, but it will be soon. It will be somewhere, I think, November. So looking forward to that. And if you want to post something on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, make sure you tag Speakeasy, because then I can repost you, and that's all nice for every one of us. Okay. Today, we have a full packed program, and with lots of nice speakers. I will introduce them one by one. So let me click on this. So we have Ilayda as the first speaker. She's my previous colleague, and she will talk about what design for goods can do in her work at DigiZorg as UX lead. And then we have Irlanda. Irlanda is the founder and creative director at Bentic Studio, and she will talk about integrating cultural sensitivity into your creative practice. So must be really interesting. And she will be followed up by Samantha. She's the editor-in-chief at Impact Edition. And she says, "You're only so special alone. Why a narrow focus on skill specialization holds us all back." So these are really serious topics, and I think these are really interesting as well. And then we have Willem, also my previous colleague from a different company. And he's a service designer at Pling Pling Pling, which is a beautiful name, I think. And he will talk about collaborative briefs, start something great together. And then we have Saman. And he's a staff product designer at Mobiquity, hard name to pronounce. And he's working, I think, for the Europe base of Mobiquity. And he will talk about design and DE&I. So looking forward to that as well. And then we have Massimo. Massimo worked previously at Côte d'Azur and Super Cheesecake, so you probably know him from there. If not, he's now freelancing as a brand and product director, and he will talk about a layoff is a great opportunity to reset, which is absolutely true. And then we have Érada to close it all off, founder of Érada Agency. So I guess the name is coming from her own name. And she will talk about a shared delusion becomes reality, how imagination, innovation, and early adopters help drive societal acceptance of new technologies. Long title, hopefully also a long talk. Looking forward to this one as well. So we have 7 speakers. I would almost say 8, but 8 blocks, but 7 speakers. And we are starting with Ilayda immediately to make it all work within the 1.5 hour we have. So I want to introduce you to Ilayda.
Yes, perfect. Share my screen. There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm here to tell you a story. None of that inspired by true events, an actual true story. So the woman on the left is my colleague Merel. She's an amazing UX designer. And the woman on the right, as you can see, is a doctor, an oncologist to be precise. Well, back in 2019, Merel was faced with an illness. And well, besides having to deal with that, she also had to deal with the frustrating patient journey in a hospital, from filling in papers, unclear communication, a lot of scattered information. Digital healthcare is a mess. So she had a dream. And here they're sitting, patient and doctor, 4 years later, looking at an app that's the start of a transition in digital healthcare that seriously wants to raise the bar. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Ilayda, UX lead at DigiZorg. And after 8 years of agency experience, I decided to make a change. But working in this fast-paced industry brought me many things, of course, like meeting Martin, how to pitch ideas, handle difficult clients. And I got ambitious to use these skills to actually design for good. But why is it important that we design for good? I'm going to take you back to 2014, where I found an interesting talk by Carolee Close. It says, "Will healthcare embrace digital or will we die waiting?" Quite a compelling title. But what actually caught my attention is that she pointed out all of the technology in healthcare is not going to work if we can't connect the data and use it the way we deliver healthcare. I could not have said it better. All the information lies in the heart of healthcare. The data is there, the technology is there. It's just not really connected. So let's jump into 2024, 10 years later. Where are we? These are 3 hospitals in Rotterdam that use the same software to access a patient's digital medical records. But this system is so closed that none of them can exchange the data with each other about their patients, even if it's the same patient. Patient really needs to give very explicit permissions for a healthcare provider to do that per individual hospital. And many patients are not aware that they need to do this, or they think they already did, which is not the case. So imagine a person coming into an emergency room and not able to speak or tell what's going on. How are you going to access their file? Are you going to call all 40 hospitals in the region to see if they know this patient? Or what if you want to transfer information from one healthcare provider to another, but there is no simple thing as copy-paste? There are situations where information about a patient needs to be rewritten multiple times. Remember this game you used to play? You tell something, a story to someone, and then they tell to the person next to you, and so goes on. Well, we all know how the game ends. And this is what's going on right now in digital healthcare in the Netherlands. All kinds of tools, apps, platforms that all try to gather the right information, but they can't share it. And I wish it was as simple as just checking a box, but our system and our software are failing us. We're working with a dinosaur of a system that did not take into account how their users need and want to use the product. And this dinosaur is so unwilling to listen to the end users, to innovate, to change, to design for good. We are on a mission because we believe in a future where technology and healthcare seamlessly works together and is truly driven by heart. We are working on sharing lab results between hospitals. We want to get rid of all the paperwork. It's time to gather essential information from patients in a user-friendly, insightful, and shareable way. We want to give doctors more headspace to work with their patients. They only have 10 minutes per consult with a patient. Imagine the pressure they're under just because they have to make sure they write everything down. So, meet our transcriber tool that makes use of ChatGPT to record and transcribe conversations during a consult. 2.5 million of the Dutch population has a hard time reading and writing, and they have to deal with difficult letters. Even for me, these are difficult letters. So we want to make medical letters better understandable with AI. These are just small examples of the things we're trying to achieve, of the good things we're trying to do with design. The good news is we just got an investment of 8.1 million to work together within the region to achieve our goals, because we cannot do it alone. But with serious ambitions, of course, come serious challenges. It's never easy. While we're on this journey of impact, some things as a designer caught my attention. Healthcare is not always user first. I mean, you would expect that they put the patients first, but it's not always like that. Some of the decisions that are made, I don't fully understand. For example, patient check-in. You have to go to a counter to get a day ticket. You don't know before you get to the hospital where you have to be. Yeah, it's quite a stressful situation. You're there, you need to stand in line, you need to get a ticket, you need to keep the ticket the whole day with you. But the thing is, we already know where you have to be. It's not like the location suddenly appears when you're there. So that's an interesting thing that we should solve. Folders. We do a lot on paper. The most important information about what you will go through, what you can expect, the most important things you want to know is all on paper. I just mentioned that people have a hard time reading and understanding written information. So where's the human touch? Blood sampling is one of the most unlogical creatures of our dinosaur. Just because the system doesn't make it possible to automatically attach a lab order to an appointment, it's very sensitive to human error. So if a lab order is missing on the day of your appointment and you didn't get a sample, your appointment simply cannot go through. Or what if your appointment is very early in the morning and you'd like to take the sample elsewhere, for instance, close to your home? Nope, not possible, just because the dinosaur doesn't want it. Research has a whole other meaning in healthcare. When you drop the term research, this is usually the response. The healthcare industry is so traumatized by years and years and years of research, they're afraid. And I can't really blame them. So I take matters into my own hands. I get into the field quite often. I talk with end users. I become an assistant for a day. I even play the role of a patient for a day, just to experience what it's like and what we need to do. So from one UX designer to another, I don't need to tell you why this is important. Then there is the status quo. As UX professionals, we know how difficult it is to change people's behaviors. But with healthcare professionals, it's extra difficult. But you can't start a transformation without change. Things that I hear. Can't you just copy the current interface? I hear this so often. I don't even get pissed anymore. I just roll with my eyes. To be clear, this is the current interface. Or let's just implement things as is. No, that's not how an MVP works. Like, why should we put time and effort in a feature that's already unusable from the start? But again, people are scared. They think it will take them too much time to learn a new interface, or it will be more complex than before. But why hold on to this dinosaur? Like I said, we can't transform without change. So we need to break free. We need to break the status quo. The future generation of doctors is in need of a new status quo. And designers have the actual power to do that. We're makers, we're conceptual thinkers. We have the power to show what change and innovation can look like. We have to show them, just create it. And by that, we can earn their trust. We cannot wait for laws and regulations to change. And we can't wait for software to fail. Like I said, as makers, change is in our hands. So if you ask me if this should be our strategy, wait till we die, I would say nah. Let's gain their trust and make design part of the table so we can strive for change from the core. Thank you.
Oh, really nice, Ilayda. I see applause from the other speakers. Really good job, and yeah, this must be so grateful to work on this kind of organization and this kind of work. So in compared with the commercial business where we normally in, so really nice to see. So you're doing a really good job over there. An interesting topic, of course, as well. But we have to move on, of course, to the second speaker of today, which is Irlanda.
Awesome. Thank you, Martin. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here as a part of Speakeasy. Thank you, Martin, for organizing this amazing event. So today I'm going to be speaking about a topic that's really close to my heart and that I wish I had learned earlier in my design career. And it's about integrating cultural sensitivity into your creative practice. So my name is Irlanda Navarro. I am a Mexican-American brand designer and artist. I am also the founder and creative director at Ventic Studio, a design studio in San Diego, California, in the US. So with that, let's get started. So I want to start by just doing a little refresh on why cultural sensitivity, it's really important and why it matters in design. So let's go over the role of culture in design. So as designers, I think it's really important to understand and respect cultural differences in our creative process. And this can go from when we are conceiving an idea to when we're actually designing, whether you're a graphic designer, an artist, a UX designer, an actual product designer. In any part of the process, it's important to keep those cultural contexts in mind. And I also want to explain how design can be a really powerful tool for shaping narratives. So we have the power to change the narrative of a project to it be really positive or negative. So it's a big responsibility that we have as designers. And I also want to mention the importance of creating inclusive designs that resonate with diverse audiences, especially with BIPOC communities and historically underrepresented communities. Okay, so this is something that I highly recommend. This is something that I practice on the daily basis at Ventic Studio with all of our clients, and that is to understand the cultural context. And how you do that is by knowing your client's story. So I really want to emphasize that whether you are a freelancer and you have your own company, or you're a designer as a part of a larger corporation, as a part of a company, it's always important to take the time to understand the cultural background of your clients. So that could be if you're working one-on-one with clients, or if you're in a company, that could be understanding the cultural background of the clients that the company serves or the audience that you are marketing to if you're a designer. So I want to share an example of this experience and how I work with this, getting to know the story of my clients at Ventic Studio. So I specialize in branding and web design, especially with founders and entrepreneurs who are starting out. So there's a lot of personal narratives that come into play when we are designing for that particular industry. And I always take the time to give my clients a questionnaire, and I have very intentional questions in there. And I always get so surprised with the incredible stories that they share with me, whether from their families or what their business means to them, how it's tied to the culture and roots. And this will not only enhance the overall design that I can provide for them and for their audience, but it will also create more trust, and it creates more authentic designs. So we're not just like looking for something trendy or something that they saw with a competitor. It's something that's very unique and very bespoke. So I think this is something you could take away and start, just marinating in your own process. Okay, so if you could take something away from my talk today, I would love for that to be this. So always try to avoid cultural appropriation. And I think a way to remember that is just to respect and don't borrow. Don't borrow. So what that means is pretty much, as we all know, this is a touchy subject, but there's a very fine line between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation, especially in design. So what that means is really, when the way I see it, obviously, is if you use designs that are inspired in another culture or elements that are represented from another culture, just use them respectfully, and you can always do research. You can always consult with community members. You can do, double checking with your sources. And if you are ever in doubt, just credit where credit is due, right? So if you took inspiration from motifs or, shapes from another culture, just make sure to give credit to that on your designs. And I think that is a very good practice to keep, and you should be good. Okay, so let's talk about designing for everyone. So this is where it gets really fun. I think that practicing inclusivity in design is actually really fun when you take the time to really do it in an intentional way. So how you could do that, and how I like to share with others who are getting into design and are getting more familiar with inclusivity, is just ask yourself, how can I design this for everyone? So there are a lot of free tools that you can use on the World Wide Web, on the internet. There are free tools for checking accessibility on your designs. So they can look like tools that will run through your design, and they will point out where some text is not easy to read. And it will give you like pointers on what to change. I think those are easy things that as designers and as creatives, we can start using on a daily basis, just to ensure that we're not leaving out a certain part of the population that maybe cannot read that, or they cannot see certain colors. And it's just, takes us a couple extra 2-3 minutes in our design process, and just we're helping making the world more inclusive. And another one that you can take into account is to make sure that you're using diverse representation in your visuals. So if you're a graphic designer, for example, this could look like sourcing different ethnicities and people who look different with different bodies in stock photography, when you're working in a marketing campaign or promoting your own materials. Also, if you're a content creator, like, you can also make sure to use diversity. And obviously language sensitivity, especially with the current state of the world. Always make sure that you're researching and that nothing is coming as tone deaf. Okay, and so I think this is a really important slide that I wanted to share with you guys. Is this is a process. It's a lifelong process to be evolving as culturally sensitive designers, and it's all about learning and adaptation. So I just want to leave you with one reminder, that is, just always try to stay open to new cultural insights. Just because you have a ton of experience in your industry does not mean that you cannot be open to something new, or how new designers are probably using other verbiage, or maybe they're using other types of visuals. Like, just stay curious. And I think that as creatives, we have that naturally, right? Like, we're just curious. So lean into that curiosity and look into what is new out there. What can I learn? How can I adapt that to my designs? And obviously, also another really good tool is to just share resources, because you never know who you're going to be helping out. Like, for example, me sharing this with you guys today, I'm probably helping like younger designers or people who are thinking about moving into design, and they probably hadn't considered that accessibility is a very important part of it. And always share on your socials. Even if it's just one post, it could change somebody else's day, or yeah. And then the other reminder is, it's okay to make mistakes, but it's essential to listen, learn, and grow from them. I have definitely made so many mistakes in this regard, and it's only through trial and error and allowing yourself the grace to say, okay, I tried and I messed up, but I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to do better next time. Okay, so I want to leave you with 3 actionable steps. If you are someone who probably hadn't been as familiar with accessibility or with this cultural sensitivity topics, I think that there's a ton of research to be done. I'm definitely no expert in this. This is more of my unique point of view, but these 3 actionable steps I think could help everybody. So this is my invitation for you to take action and not just, listen to this talk and not take anything from it. So the first one is to research your client's culture and audience. Research is your best friend as a designer, even if it's not a part of your scope as a designer, or if you're not getting paid to research. Always double check your sources. Always make sure that you're not appropriating any other culture, and just research, research, research. And when in doubt, just ask your peers. Okay, so number 2 would be to collaborate with diverse voices. And okay, a typo there, sorry about that. Yeah, collaborate with diverse voices. So what that means is, can you ask other folks in your industry who probably have a different perspective from yours, or they come from a different background? Like, can you share your experiences? Can you bring any of those insights into your design? And that can make your experience so much richer, and for everybody else too. And then the third one is to design with empathy. So just remember that question I said a couple slides back. Can I design this for everyone? Is it accessible? Is it easy to understand? And yeah, I think these 3 steps should be really good for you to start with your accessibility in design journey. Okay, and with that, I hope I left you with some good food for thought. And yeah, I just wanted to share this last slide with my brand and showing that we love this type of messaging and working with all sorts of different brands, always with inclusivity and accessibility in mind. And thank you so much. And I'm excited to be sharing this space with all the other cool creatives. So thanks.
Really nice, Irlanda. That was a really nice talk, and I think it's a nice follow-up after Ilayda's talk, where we talk about inclusivity and thinking about everyone. I think it's in the healthcare even more important. So really thank you, and also nice quote of like designing for everyone, literally everyone. That's also a really nice challenge. We should keep it in mind more often. So I want to thank you for that. Let's move on to Samantha.
Hi, everyone. Well, I'm going to get my screen share going. Okay. Bear with me a moment.
I bear with you.
Thank you. Okay. Wait, hang on. I even practiced this before.
No worries. We can also switch you around with someone else. So if it's not working, then we...
Okay. Okay, let me give it one more shot.
Okay, one more shot, and otherwise, Jan Willem, hopefully you're ready. Then we move on to you.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm sorry. Gotta switch me. I don't know what happened.
No worries, no worries. Then let's switch with Jan Willem, and then you have some time to figure it out.
Okay.
All right, wonderful. Do you want to give an introduction, Martin, or should I just run for it?
No, I just thought. I think you can introduce yourself the best.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jan Willem Franken. I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm a service designer. So that means I do research, obviously, and a big part of my job as well, or my work, is to work with groups of people and have them create choices together, or create things, but make collaborative choices. And a really important part of that thing is the brief. And I came across this topic when you give me the opportunity to speak here, Martin, because I don't know if you remember, but the first time we worked together, I was a strategist at Clockwork and you were a designer, and I wrote out a brief and I printed it on paper and I put it on your desk, and then when you said that's the first time someone has done that here, give me a brief as a designer. And I was really surprised about it back then. And ever since, I've learned that briefs are really important in projects and design projects. And if that train is leaving the station, you gotta make sure it's on the right track. So that's why I want to talk about briefs today, and how to create them as a team or as a group. Because I've always felt like that things that could have been avoided during a project could have been solved in writing a better brief. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, and I'm going to show you a workshop. Actually, it's a ready-made thing. It's in Miro, so excuse me for not being that mobile friendly. I hope you have good eyes, people watching at home, but I'm sure we're going to be all right. So it's these frameworks. I'm going to talk you through it, and I'm going to set a timer to make sure I'll be on time. All right, so this is a workshop you can do with clients. Either if you're hired or in-house, it's something you can practice. And this is what it's about. This is the workshop about. So usually when projects start, you first have some conversations with different people, but there's not really one gathering where you talk about it. And even if so, people talk about it, and there's things might go all over the place. And this is a way to structure it. So here you have the idea, that's an intention, desired outcome, agenda, rules, and timing. The desired outcome, and that's an important thing of this workshop, is you have the foundation of your design brief. So it's not really done yet, but you have talked about it and you've structured that information. After that, someone else can work it out in a document. These are the things to talk about. So you have the introduction, the check-in, desired outcome, mapping risks, collective knowledge, or collecting knowledge, team and stakeholders, timeline, budget, checkout. Basically, the topics that should be in a creative brief anyway, but you're going to go over them one by one, and you have different ways of getting there, different assignments, if you will. Right, there's some things about rules, so that's a little trick I usually practice when doing workshops. I ask the team, the participants, if we want to be here and now, how should we do that? And then usually someone says we shouldn't use phones. That's pretty easy, right? So, or we should turn off the notifications. By doing this, you let the team decide what should be the rules, so they're more involved and making sure they will stick to that rules instead of me as a facilitator forcing those rules on them. If I say you shouldn't use phones, nobody bothers. All right, so that's rules. It's probably me facilitating. And it's 3 hours, 2 times 1.5. It's pretty long, but then you're making sure that you got a pretty solid basis for your briefing. All right, moving on to check-in. And this might sound like a little simple thing, like asking a question to everyone, but there's a little trick in this. Because you ask, or you write down the names of the people involved. You ask them to write the job title. It's the first one. Second one is, what do you most care about in this project? Now, the important thing here is that when people have a job, they have a certain responsibility, and with that responsibility comes a certain stake they have in projects, and that's the thing you want to know. So if you have conversations or discussions and people are confronting each other with, I don't know, arguments, you can always fall back on what you have written down here. Ask them, what do you think is important, instead of what's your opinion, and steer the conversation into a different way. So it might look like a little check-in question, but actually it's a pretty useful one. Actually, I've used it a lot in these type of workshops. All right, so that's actually the introduction of the workshop. Now moving on to the first part of the brief, which is the current situation. So you want to know why you have the situation as it is and what's going on. Why do you have the project anyway? So you ask them to write things down on a separate part of the board. Each of the participants will have their own little placemat where they can write things down, and afterwards they will move it around on the board. So for example, I've got a hypothetical brief here, but there might be, imagine a company that's in delivery, and they get complaints about the delivery service. So Someone might want to write that one down. People, let's just say customers, do not know when they can expect their parcel. That's a problem, and that's something we can add to the current situation. Now, the interesting thing is, if everyone on the team does that, you might see certain trends or topics emerge, or they might have different conflicting things they see. And that's an interesting conversation to have, right? So that's why you create separate placemats, so you can combine them afterwards or see the differences. So that's for the current situation. Also, you want to find out what the challenge is. So that might be managing customer expectations. Also here you might have different opinions, or what the challenge should be, or you can cluster them into one same thing. All right, now that you've mapped out the current situation and find agreement on that, it's good to know, by the way, that this is mostly done in silence. So the writing on the sticky notes, the placing them on a different part of the board, it's all done in silence. Afterwards you have a little talk, but in my opinion that goes pretty quickly actually, if people think first and then talk. All right, then moving on to the desired outcome. So again, you have the different names of the people, and they all have a few sticky notes they can use. The objectives, so what do we want to achieve and how do we measure that success, basically that. Also scope, so what do we do and what do we don't do. So for example, an objective is we want to have less stress for our customers. That results in happier customers, but how do we measure that? We get less complaints. So it's just that easy, basically. It looks easy now, but we're not with that many people, so that's maybe why it is. Then moving on to the scope, there's certain things you do, certain things you don't do. Just map that out over here. And then in the end, that's where, for most designers, things get interesting. What's the actual deliverable? So should it be a PDF, a PowerPoint? Could be anything, a whole new process or whole new service or proposition. Could be anything, but it's interesting, or it's actually needed to write it down over here. All right. In reaching that goal that you've just written down, there might be certain risks involved. So there might be high risk, something that's a great chance of happening, or low risk, though that's a small chance this will happen. That's on this axis. The other one is from left to right. There's a small impact if that will happen, or a big impact on reaching the outcome. You want to map these things out, because if you have, for example, there's some regulation going on, or there's difficulty within the company to get certain parts of the company involved, that might be of a high risk and a big impact on the outcome. So if you have different risks, the ones that are in the top right are probably the one you want to keep an eye on, because they have a high risk and big impact on the outcome. So that's something that might help a team and to actually get this conversation going on what could go wrong. So it's okay to think a bit negatively at this point, but after that's done, you know what to keep an eye on, and then you can move on to more positive things, and that's actually the collective knowledge. So probably it's not the first attempt on solving this problem, or there might be some information that could be helpful in solving this problem. So here you have some space to talk about the target group, who are the people we are going to serve, and also what do we already know about them. As you see, there's not that many space in this area. That's probably because, or that is because you probably want to do some homework before or afterwards. It's not really that useful to go through all kinds of documents at this point, but you can refer to those documents and read them later. But it's important. It's important to make sure you're not redoing things. So you got 4 minutes left, so I'm going to speed up a bit. This is a Raki model. Probably you know, you will notice as designers or people who worked in design projects earlier. You've got different departments. and names, and you can map those out on a model like you see here. So in the center, you have the core team. Those are the people who are actually working on the project. Around that's a layer of what they call accountable people. So it's probably management and people who are responsible for the core team, or business responsibility. Around that, that's a layer of consultant. So people you want to ask for information. And in the outer space, it's the informed. Those are the people who get an email when there's an update on the project, basically. But these are the persons that are involved in the project. The nice thing about that is that you can have a conversation about who does what, and also who's involved at which part of the project. Not everyone has to be there all the time, but you can have a conversation about it using this map. All right. Moving on, you have a timeline. So at what point should this be done? So for example, Q4, and then you can set milestones and know what you're going to work and can expect at what time. So that's the timeline. And then last but not least, budget. So you can ask, what's the budget on this? Is it a small range or a small budget, medium or large? This might be a pretty sensitive topic to do it within a group. So you might want to do this one-on-one, or at least talk about what the actually ranges are, small, medium, and large. So you might not want to do this in group, but I just put it in here anyway. And then as a checkout, ask people what success looks like. This is a good signal for what motivates them, probably. So you can keep an eye on that during the project. And that's the workshop. And as a conclusion, I have to move to the beginning of the board because I have created a little wrap up for you. And that's the key takeaways. That's if you're doing creative briefs, make sure you visualize what you talk about if you get people involved, because if someone talks, someone else might hear something different. And it's just make sure if you visualize it that everyone's on the same page. Also, and that's a little trick I just showed you, is writing things down, mapping them on a board, and then afterwards talk about it is a little way to give people time to think, because most of the times when they're talking, they cannot think. So that's a way to help people. And as a third one, help others to be clear, because creating a structure like this helps others to write down what they think and what they actually want, and in the end, this will benefit everyone. So that's it. That's a little, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes, I guess. Hello, exit through the gift shop. If you want to reach out to me and actually want to have this template, I wanted to put it in Miro first, but I just didn't have the time. So if you want to have it, reach out to me via LinkedIn or send me an email, and I'll make sure I'll get it to you. And I also have a toolbox, a service design toolbox on my website if you want to visit that. It's in Dutch, so sorry for everyone non-Dutch, but I can say it's very handy. All right, that's it. I'm moving on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Nice, Jan-Willem. This was really, it's really good that people like you are rethinking these kind of processes and organize workshops with this kind of stuff, because I think this is really insightful for lots of people, because almost everyone, I think, in this group, but also in the people who are watching the stream, are working with briefs. So yeah, I think this is really nice. Thanks for that. And yeah, maybe explain in the YouTube chat why your company is called Pling Pling Pling, because I also was curious.
Cool.
Let's move on to Samantha, if you're ready, and otherwise to Saman.
I think so.
Okay, then we move on with Samantha.
Okay.
Let's give it a shot.
Okay. Do we see a presentation?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Samantha Schalit, and I'm really excited to be live with you today. But before I start, I want to give a heartfelt thank you to Martin for giving us a platform to connect with others across the world for the sake of creativity. So I'm going to be talking about how you're not so special alone, and that it's an argument for why a narrow focus on skill specialization and siloing departments strictly can hold us all back. So in 10 minutes, you'll get to know me a little bit more, and I'm going to tell you about a realization that's been 10 years in the making. Hopefully I'll impress you with my Canva design skills, or at least not offend anybody. But more importantly, I hope that you'll be inspired to think differently about too often siloed approaches to creative work. So I want to start by telling you a story. There are two experiences that put a really deep fear in me. And the first one was in journalism school. A professor was advising me on my post-grad moves, and he warned me about straying away from journalism if that's really what I wanted to do. And if I switched industries or took time away from journalism, it's too difficult for me to come back. He even said, and I quote, "Advertising is the dark side." That exchange was filed away in the back cabinets of my mind, you know, the creaky kind that makes a banging noise when the wind blows hard enough. And there's a few times I've heard that cabinet banging since then. But I fell into advertising anyway. And it's the beginning of the bright side of this story. And it catalyzed me toward the revelation about specialization that I'm going to tell you about. So a little bit about me. I studied creative writing and journalism, and I've spent 10 years at ad agencies here in Miami. But I've spent 5 years as Impact Edition's editor-in-chief. And that experience as a whole is why I was inspired to give this talk and why this topic is really important to me. And I'm going to show you work from Impact Edition, give you an introduction to who we are in order to drive this point. So who is Impact Edition? This is the journalism that I always dreamed of. We elevate the voices of diverse local change makers who influence a positive, lasting change. I am talking about people who are working toward climate and social justice. And our publication is nonprofit. We're community driven, and we're born in Miami. So all of our stories cover people who live and work in and around Miami and South Florida, and we take a hyper-local approach to journalism. But we're not really news either. We're more of a feature magazine. But what we practice is called solutions journalism, which is about covering the response to a problem, and we prioritize featuring people who are creating lasting change. Now, we know that content is a competitive space, and inspiring the public and the powerful to get involved in their communities means meeting people where they are. So I'm going to tell you about a campaign that we designed that started a completely new trajectory for Impact Edition and really meets people where they are. So this is Who is Miami? Storytelling for Change. And this is where journalism meets advertising, public art, and community. It all started with one of the many sad side effects of the pandemic. Museums and cultural experiences were generally closed. So when our first openings took place in 2021 and 2022, our streets became a setting for safe outdoor art and story-driven experiences. And our goal was to remind Miami who we are as a community. It's the sum of our experiences as journalists, getting to know this city differently than any tourist and even most locals. So I'd like to also introduce you via this photo to some of the people behind this project. Featured on the left is Greg Clark of Good Miami, and he is the photography to our wordplay. He's standing next to me, and Yulia, Impact Edition's founder and publisher. And this is the 2023 launch of Who is Miami at the Bright Line train station downtown. And that location alone got us almost 2 million views for this campaign. So his photos are really the center point in the Who is Miami campaign and our 3 print collections, with a 4th coming that is in production coming out early next year. And my point is that this campaign wouldn't have been possible without strong partnerships among diverse creators and an openness to combining these seemingly separate disciplines of journalism, advertising, and art. Now I'll tell you a little bit about the experience of this campaign. We are aiming to capture the tremendous and sometimes invisible efforts of local changemakers fighting for social and environmental justice. And we know that representation matters. So when you engage with stories about ordinary people making an extraordinary difference, you're more likely to advocate and take action. So since the pandemic, and when community spaces became safer, we started to branch out into other venues around Miami and South Florida. We've shown Who is Miami at gallery exhibitions, at universities, at our main public library downtown, in addition to the Bright Line station, and bus stops and out of home around the city. So the experience basically is you pass a bus stop, or you engage in one of the galleries. You encounter this eye-catching portrait photography, and you scan the QR code to get instant access to compelling community journalism. So on the left of this image, you'll see a sample of our out-of-home campaign. On the right is a local bookstore gallery, and the phone mock-up in the middle is essentially where you go when you scan the QR code from any of these locations. It's the same story. So this is the realization that I've come to in doing this work. Meaningful collaboration across disciplines demands a safe space for specialists to shine, and it requires an openness to the idea that one person's specialty can come down to stretching their capabilities. So I challenge you, whether you're working at an agency or looking for a new hire or investing in creative disruption, be open to seemingly uncommon connections. Great ideas and beautiful work come from the creative department, of course, but that isn't the only source. Impactful ideas don't only come from one person either. What perspective could a program manager, a systems thinker bring to a brainstorm for activations? What artistry is a data scientist capable of? And how can you stretch your specialty to make room for your own beautifully complicated humanity? What else are you capable of that you're not capitalizing on? So thanks for hanging with me. I have left a QR code up here if you want to follow Impact Edition. That's a QR code to our website, impactedition.org, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'd love to know what you think about our campaign and our work, and hope that this inspired you.
It definitely inspired me. Thanks a lot, Samantha, and also thanks for using my style in the slides. So, props for that. But also, of course, a really nice topic, and I think it's really nice indeed to dive into other industries and other disciplines as well, even when you're a specialist. Maybe even more when you're a specialist. And yeah, I'm an art director at DEP, so I also have to do that always. So yeah, it's a really good learning. And I said, I think also one of the reasons why I started Speakeasy, to bring these people together. So really nice. Thanks, Amanda. And we move on now with Saman. Almost the same name.
Oh no, I seem to have some trouble screen sharing as well.
Oh no, what a bad timing. Okay. Let's move on then to Massimo. And I hope you're
Sure,
ready.
why not?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Let's give me a second.
Yeah.
Am I sharing something?
Yes.
I am, right?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. And
Works
I'll
smooth.
skip the line. But yeah, I will be talking about that being laid off is, well, might be the best next thing for you. But before I dive into my story, I want to give you like a little bit of a background of who I am. I am Massimo. I'm a freelance brand and product director, and I'm helping out brands and agencies crafting digital experiences. And over the last 20 years or so, I started in advertising, but slowly moved from product toward branding, and also over time I moved up the career ladder towards director level. Started as a junior and just worked my way up. And what I kind of like learned over the last few years is like running teams, departments, and whole business. And at my last job at Côte d'Azur, I was able to work on very nice projects for Lotus, Odido, also working on the new branding for the agency, which will go live tomorrow, what I've heard. And besides that, I was managing a team together with another design director, Priscilla, who was amazing, loved her. And together we kind of like grew the team and business from 8 designers towards 30. And I was at the agency for about 3.5 years or so. And then this happened, layoffs. And I'm pretty sure that, well, probably everybody's looking and watching this now knows somebody who's got laid off over the last year or so. Many agencies, many companies are struggling at the moment. It's getting better. But yeah, even though I kind of like saw this one coming, it hurt. You know, when it happened, I was going through like a mix of a lot of different emotions, from feeling really sad to being, very frustrated, angry, stressed, but also scared of like not knowing what will happen. And then it took me a few weeks just to accept it. And then I also realized that, well, this is also like a great opportunity. Looking back at it, like I also kind of needed. I needed a big reset. So for me, rather than just rushing into the next job, I wanted to take the time just to, pay attention to my feelings and reevaluate the learnings from the past and figure out my next steps from there. So I kind of asked myself, was this really what I wanted to do? And if I could, what would I change? Was I really happy at the position I was at? And when you're at 100%, when it's the best job ever, obviously you're not going to move. Although things never are 100% forever. But still, like, even around like the 80%, you're kind of like comfortable. It's good. You're having fun, and well, the moment you're kind of like moving towards like 60%, okay-ish, you maybe start doubting. You're not actively looking yet, but if somebody approaches you, you'll start talking. And well, I don't even want to start when you get below the 40s, and you just start looking. You don't care about work, and you just want to burn the place. But looking back at my period, I think I was somewhere around like 80-ish. Like, the job was okay, the projects were okay, I had a lot of fun, had a great team, loved the people there. But as a manager, I had a lot of stress. I was like constantly in meetings. Like, there's always shit going on. I was managing a team of like, well, from the 30 people, I was managing 18 directly. I was overloaded with projects. I was working overtime a lot. And well, on a personal level, I've got 2 kids, got a mortgage to pay. So, I can't just run. I also got responsibilities. So, I kind of realized as well that I started to become stuck. So I knew I didn't want to apply for the same role straight away again, or at least not in the same way. So secretly, it was a blessing in disguise, that layoff. You know, it was a great opportunity. I had a okay redundancy package. I know I'm eligible for government unemployment benefits, so I'm in the lucky position just to, take some time off and be able to explore for a few months. And at first it was very scary, but in time, kind of like, I was looking for new ideas. I was looking for new connections, new opportunities, and I just was embracing it, and it was very liberating in the end. So I just started reaching out to friends and connections and former colleagues, just to see how the market's like, and where are the gaps. To former clients to see, like, hey, where are they struggling with, and like maybe how can I help out. Reaching out to other freelancers and business owners to hear their story, and to kind of like hear as well, like, how did they start? What were the things they were struggling with starting up? And I quickly realized overall that people were really willing to help, and one conversation starts another, and you starting getting introduced to other people, and those introductions leads to new opportunities, new insights. And over the last just few months, like I've got this out of it. So I had loads of coffees, too many. 7 out of the 10 people replied back to all my messages. I got multiple introductions, which led to new opportunities. So within like a few months, I got multiple freelance gigs. I've got a couple of leads for big branding projects, working for clients directly. And also last week, I kind of like delivered my first big project all on my own, together with a friend. And I hope to roll this out somewhere in this next month. So overall, like, I can't really complain, but of course, starting up, as a freelancer, I also want to be honest. There are also lows in there. Starting up, there are loads of uncertainties. You're constantly bumping into walls, having to figure out everything by yourself, chasing clients a lot. I also had like 3 last-minute cancellations, missing out on work. One client that didn't pay, or at least it took forever. Schedules are moving, projects are getting delayed, and that's also part of the life. But overall, I do really like the new way of living. For me, mostly because it brought me more balance. I now just have more flexibility. Just like the other day, the last week of the summer holiday was a beautiful day. The kids were at home, and I just decided just to take them to the zoo, just because I could. And don't get me wrong, like I still work very hard. And looking at it, like the beginning was very, very stressful, but now being more flexible, feel less stressed about work. Got more control. I'm working on the things that I actually like to do. I realized that more and bigger is not necessarily better. I just figured out that a better balance for myself, and this is something also that I kind of want to build upon. So it took me a few months just to get here, but rather than going back to the bigger, the faster, the more, I think there's something special, something beautiful in smaller, being more focused, looking into quality, building relationship. And for me, things started to come together. So this is also the first time I'm kind of announcing this in public, and it's also a bit scary. But I want to start something new. I want to start my own small business called Tiny Mass. Tiny Mass, a company of one, small in size, but massive on impact. And I want to focus on helping scale-ups and startups and scale-ups to create and sharpen their positioning and elevate their brand identities. And I kind of want to stay small, but being very flexible. And kind of per projects, I'm creating project scenes, working together with other strategists, other designers, developers, or even studios. I'm still working on the whole branding and website, so more will follow soon. But yeah, that's sort of like my new exciting kind of like ventures about to start to happen. But for now, well, I think I'm also running a bit over time, so let's wrap it up. Things that I kind of learned over the last few months is that layoffs are terrible. They're horrible. They're very impactful on your life, your mood, your family. It comes with a lot of stress, emotions, and that's okay. You don't need to be too hard on yourself. Secondly, see this as an opportunity for of growth. It all feels scary, but just embrace it and just get yourself out there, explore, meet new people, talk to as many people as you can, and see it as a long-term thing. Like, invest in those relationships, learn new skills, do new things. But most of all, and my last kind of thing is, and this is the most difficult one as well, being patient. At least it was for me. Just take your time if you can, because eventually the right opportunities will come. And looking back, my years kind of started really terrible, really shit. But I'm more than excited right now, just for the things that are to come. So yeah, that's kind of my story. I'm hoping helping a few people in here, but thank you for listening. Appreciate your time, and love to get in touch as well with people who love to collaborate on future projects. And if you have any questions or comments, then please reach out. And my apologies for running a bit of time.
That's all okay. And I want to thank you for your personal story, because that's really nice that you're talking about this and also talking about the downside of things, but also the upside of getting a layoff, because that's also important to mention. And layoffs are, of course, an actual topic, I think, in the industry and also worldwide. So thanks for highlighting this, and yeah, hope and wish you all the best, of course, with Tiny Mess, which is an awesome name. So I am looking forward to that. Thanks again, Massimo. We move forward to Saman, hopefully.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gonna give it another go.
Okay, let's give it a shot again. Yeah.
Share screen. I think you're all seeing yourself now.
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Share entire screen.
Yes, this
Yes?
Yes.
We got it. Okay.
Awesome.
So thank you, Martin, for allowing me to speak here. Very exciting. I'll be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in design. I tried a little bit of a wordplay thing here. Let me know if that works. So what is diversity, equity, and inclusion, actually? Because there's a lot of acronyms going on, and it's easy to get lost in those. So diversity means embracing different backgrounds, identities, and perspectives within a group. Equity is ensuring fair treatment and providing tailored support based on individual needs. And inclusion is fostering a culture where everybody feels welcomed, valued, and able to fully participate. And before we go into things that we can do in the creative industry, because it's more about the creative industry than design eventually, so the title might be a bit wrong. So I want to talk a little bit about myself and who I am and why I did why I'm talking about this. So, as you can see in the pictures, I am adopted by two lovely Dutch parents, together with my twin sister, as you can see in the pictures. And I remember a very early on memory where I thought, hey, I have a little bit of a different skin color than my parents, and I was kind of curious why that is and how that came to be. So they had quite a difficult conversation that they had to have with me, and I think that that's where my diversity and inclusion story started. I found it a little bit difficult to find a place for myself in the world, and who am I and how does those things work? And obviously you get to education at one point and try to find something, a career or a passion in life. And I struggled a lot with that to figure out what I wanted to do. And as you can see in some of the pictures here, I tried out a couple of things, cooking and construction work even. But I got derailed, flunked out of high school, did a lot of smoking weed and drinking alcohol with my friends. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And luckily, a friend of mine, James, was studying graphic design in Utrecht. And he taught me a bit of Photoshop, and then I could apply to a college called the ROC and applied for a design education to kind of figure out if I wanted to do something creative. I did that, graduated there finally, so I did find a passion in design. But also during school time, I had early school time in that sense. I had a lot of bullying going on in my life, and that was because of my skin color. Later on, I became a professional. I tried to find my way in the design world, mainly product design and those type of things. And I've noticed a little bit of those different treatments for people of color and women, especially. Me having a Dutch last name is also one of the things that surprises people, catches them off guard when I go to interviews and those type of things, that I don't look Dutch. But I luckily was able to put myself in a lot of nice positions and grow in the design field and really, be happy in my career and be a good professional. And now I've tried to do a lot of for the people that have it a little bit harder, try to create a little bit of awareness through things like this. So that's how I got into diversity and inclusion talks. I think I realized also that there's a lot of extra groups besides like the first two, gender and race, are obviously groups of people that we know are being marginalized, but there's also sexuality and ableism. Those are a little bit less common. But then you also have neurodiversity, which is things like ADHD or autism, and even ageism, where, for example, people that are elderly go back into the workforce or go back studying, or a young CEO, for example. Cultural backgrounds is also an important thing. For example, which country you live in, or where do you come from, and what kind of religious beliefs do you have, and your socioeconomic background. So where did you grow up? What kind of status do your parents hold, or your family? Were you able to go to university, for example? Those type of things. And now I'll show a couple of statistics in our industry and globally. So, for example, in advertising, only 16% of women hold senior creative roles, although they make up half of the entry-level positions. So that's quite a shocking number, in my opinion, that only 16% of the people, of the women, are able to go into those senior creative positions. And this is globally, and it's I put a link to the report in all of the examples that I give, so you can check those out. We have the pay gap. This is based on the USA because they do a lot of studies there, and it's a wide range of people that they are able to study on. So these are the cents on the dollar that people make. So when white men would make $1 an hour for the same role, white women would make 77 cents on that dollar. People of color would 65 cents, and Latino women would make 49 cents. And this last topic, Latina women, is a good example of intersectionality, which means that if you belong to two groups, you could be discriminated on by either of those groups or at the same time. And that also shows in the numbers, for example, the 49 cents there. Then another example of those marginalized groups, in this case, intersectional groups, 64% of LGBTQ plus elders have experienced some form of workplace discrimination. 64% to me is a little bit wild. It's way over half. So that's quite shocking. And usually when we talk about these statistics, I just named the USA. But these are some statistics from the Netherlands. So women earn up to 300,000 euros less than men in their careers. People with a non-Western migrant background earn up to 30% less, and 46% of LGBTQ plus employees hide their sexual orientation or gender identity at work because they feel unsafe to disclose that information. Now, some people think that they won't be in any of those groups, but I really like this quote. I don't know where it's from, but we're all just temporarily abled. That kind of alludes to the fact that at one point you will get older, and for example, your eyesight would fall away. It would be less easy for you to experience all these great digital experiences that we're making, or art, or anything like that. And it would be nice for you when you're in that stage of your life to be able to experience those things. And this is why it's also an important topic for you. Luckily, it's not all doom and gloom and bad statistics. There are very easy things that we can do to help people, help those people be on a level playing field. For example, inclusive job postings, write them in a way that attracts a diverse range of talents and anonymize the CVs. And while you do the interviews with those people, have a diverse interview panel. So make sure that the diverse group of people are interviewing the people, so you get a different range of perspectives. Offer paid internships. So if you do internships, please offer them paid, so people with lesser socioeconomic background can also join in on those and get that experience that they usually need to get into the workforce. Create accessible experiences. A couple of other speakers already touched upon that. It's super important to be able to create a wider range of your own audience. So it's a win-win for everybody. And then some long-term commitments that you could do is mentorship programs. There are a lot of awesome mentorship programs focusing on those diverse groups. Join them, help them. And another thing that we could do is really define those anti-discrimination policies. A lot of companies have those, but they don't address all of the forms of discrimination and identity. Create inclusive output. So whatever you're creating, test it with diverse users, make it accessibility compliant. It's also law, I think, in the USA at least, and in EU as well. And use your learning budget to educate yourself on DE&I if you have a learning budget at your company, or do an accessibility a training or create a training. So those are quick things that we could do as a group in our industry to help create diverse talent. So for the diverse group, people in the diverse groups, find allies and support that can help you. And for the new allies or existing allies, amplify those diverse voices and challenge those biases. Be the change. And if you want to talk about it a little bit more, because in 10 minutes, it's a little bit difficult to touch upon these topics in depth, but I can imagine people have questions or want to know more about this, please contact me on my socials. It's all in the Speakeasy posts. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Saman. That was a really beautiful story again, and it was a nice add-on to the story of Irlanda. I think it's a more deep dive, which is really good to see. And again, like inclusivity, we should talk maybe even more about that, because a lot of people forget it or only think about like the most common things, but we should think about it in a wider spectrum. So that's really nice. Thanks, Saman. And then we are going to, I think, the last speaker of today. Yes, to Érada.
Yes.
Or Érada, sorry, maybe I pronounce it.
Érada, yeah.
Érada, okay. yeah.
All right. Everyone can see my screen, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Great. Sorry, I can't get rid of the browser window, but we're just gonna move on. All right, a shared delusion becomes reality. How imagination, innovation, and early adopters help drive societal acceptance of new technologies. Now, it's a really long title, but just bear with me here. First, before I go into all of this, remember, I want to make a point that definitions are explanations that somebody made up. Everything is fabricated in our society. So we assign words meaning, but as humanity advances, there's a lot of opportunity for adaptation, for things to change. So in science, delusion lives under the category of psychopathology, the science of mental illness or disorders. But delusion is essentially incorrigible false judgment. It is madness rooted in imagination and not shared by others. And that's something that we're going to touch on later. It's an unshakable belief despite contrary evidence. Now, in history, especially in modern time, delusion has become a common word in our vernacular. And sometimes delusion can be very entertaining because there are people who have beliefs that cannot be proven quite yet. But that doesn't stop them from sharing their ideas and their imagination. But what is imagination? Imagination is essentially seeing with your brain. But as humans, generally, most of us have 8 types of imagination. They are effectuate. Effectuate is how to predict outcomes, imagining outcomes. Intellectual is looking at existing models and imagining a new way to do it. Imaginative fantasy, which is creating something from nothing. Empathy, imagining what people are thinking or feeling from their perspective. Strategic is recognizing and evaluating opportunities. Emotional, emotions conjured from past events and anticipating feelings that might be tied to future events. And then there's memory reconstruction, when you're remembering, recalling things, and dreams. Obviously, everybody, I hope, has dreams while they're sleeping. But in order for imagination to transmute into innovation, we need action. We need the trial and error. We need to actually put action into the ideas and notions that we have in order to see that we can make them reality. And throughout the decades, we have had a number of people who have had visions and had imaginations and put their actions into practice, like Nikola Tesla, like Hedy Lamarr, who gave us Wi-Fi, then there's Isaac Asimov, who wrote books on the relationship between artificial intelligent robots and the relationship with humanity. Then we have David Chaum, who is a pioneer of cryptocurrency and was one of the first people to actually mention the idea of digital cash. And then the most recent player in the game is Rafiq Anadol, who has widely made machine learning and the technology behind it accessible to a wider audience. As he puts it, he likes to give a visual representation of the dreams and thoughts of the ghost within the machine. But it's, as the saying goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And so I believe that the more we collectively believe, the faster we create. And so all of these people, even though they're famously known for doing amazing things, they didn't do it alone. They acquired teams. They put together teams of people who had the same delusional beliefs that things could happen and were willing and able to work together to make these incredible innovations and discoveries that we get to enjoy today. And so with these teams, in just 64 years, we went from having computers take up entire rooms to fitting in the palm of your hand, which is pretty incredible if you think about it, especially if you look at this timeline. In just 161 years from today's date, we have steadily accelerated the proliferation of technology and innovation. It was only 161 years ago that the first mention of machines with human-like intelligence were mentioned in a paper by somebody that actually changed their name on the paper because they didn't want to be tied to such a notion and thought of as delusional. But as decades have worn on and and more people have spoken up and more people have bonded together on these projects, we're seeing the accelerated pace of more innovations, improvements on prior innovations, and new discoveries that possibly would have been delusional or considered delusional at some point or another in history. And how does this work? There's something called the law of diffusion of innovation. So if you look at the market as a whole, the two innovators make up 2.5%. Innovators are the people who camped out in front of the Apple store at midnight or maybe days earlier to get their hands on the first iPhone, the second it hit the market, with nobody having accessed it before, because they are so eager to try things, to innovate, to see if this thing can solve their problem. And I would say complementary to that are early adopters, and they have essentially the same problem. Early adopters are the sweet spot. They are people who are maybe not as earnest as the innovators. They don't actually always make the solutions themselves, like in a makeshift solution, but they are always paying attention. They are always involved. And then you have the early majority, late majority. Those are the mainstream people. Those are the people that need a little bit more time to understand if there's proof in the pudding, basically, if there is a viability of that product actually working for them in their life. And then you have the laggards, and these are the people who are not really tech savvy. They are the people who resisted getting cell phones until the very last minute. They are the people who resisted getting the smartphone because they were so married to their flip phone until the flip phone majority of the time was discontinued, and until recently. So those are not the target demographic if you're trying to launch a new product and get people to kind of buy into trying it out. So to summarize, early adopters have the same problem that the new product solves and are therefore willing to give it a try. Now, just because there are people who are willing to give it a try, you're always going to have the concern of timing and buy-in from the larger breadth of society. So those early majority, late majority, and laggards. This was published back in 2000. Granted, it's from the Daily Mail, but still, they're indignant enough to post it and actually print it in paper, that the internet may be a passing fad as millions give up on it. But fortunately, that was not the case. And we had people like David Bowie. Now, David Bowie, everybody knows him to be an artist, a singer, somebody that was super influential in the musical world. But what you don't know about, most people don't know about David Bowie, is that he was an innovator / early adopter. He believed and understood the vision of the internet. So much so that he created his own ISP, which is internet service provider, called BowieNet. Now, eventually it all faded out, but he was so passionate and so influenced by the vision of what it could be that he created his own ISP, which I think is pretty remarkable. And then we have companies like Disney, and I'm sorry, this GIF is, there we go. We have companies like Disney who are investing years and millions of dollars into testing robotics for their own back end, maybe eventually front end business needs, which I think also impacts their competitors to want to try things as well. So there's a growing acceptance of other people and different scales being early adopters into something. And then the early adopters that we all know because of social media, the TikTok stars, the social media influencers, they do play a role. And the reason that people invest in them so much is because they have a wider reach. These people have a lot of influence, and people look to them to try out new things in order to see if they maybe would be willing to try it out for themselves. And this is kind of not the decision tree, but the decision process of how things kind of get decided on in our society. You kind of get the knowledge of something, you see if it actually fits into your needs, you try it out, and then if it does work or not, you either drop it or you pass it on. And I'm going to leave this in the deck so that later on anybody can come back to it. But where do we find these early adopters? Early adopters are in communities. They are in Discord, Reddit, X, Slack channels, Substacks, and Medium. They are the social media followers that are following you or like-minded channels or your competitors. They are in the comment and review sections, helping other people who are looking for the same solution to the same problem. They're in forums asking questions because they want to connect with like-minded individuals, and they're participating in conferences, whether attending or like us speaking today, wanting to connect with like-minded individuals looking to solve the problem of connection and reach. The indicators of an early adopter are that they are open to collaboration. They have a higher tolerance for risk. They have tunnel vision on their intuition because the second they know something is going to probably work, they are gung-ho on trying it. They don't need education on the problem you're trying to solve. If you are having to educate somebody on the problem that you're trying to solve, that person is not your target demographic. So you have to keep it moving. Most, but not all, are famous. Most of them are not always famous or popular, but those people are generally trusted in their inner circle to have insight or opinion on something that matters. They do have niche taste. They sometimes have loner tendencies and maybe mask as extroverts, and they definitely have opinions on that certain subject matter. So those are the key things that you want to look out for in your network of people that you may know in your family circle and your friends circle when you're trying to get buy-in on a product that you're putting out. But timing is everything. So even if you have all of those ducks in a row and you found the right people, sometimes the timing in society is just not correct. So artificial intelligence, for example, has been around for quite some time. People have started exploring and building on it years ago. But because of an interest that slowly faded out and died out, and the reduced interest led to reduced funding. So it just kind of fizzled out and it wasn't in mainstream media as it is now. And now what they're calling it is an AI spring, hoping that it won't die out, which I don't think it will, because we are seeing ways that the mainstream, we're seeing stories basically about how AI, artificial intelligence, can help the wider range of the public, such as with people with disabilities, or people with mental health issues, or people who are just lonely, like the evolution or introduction of the friend, which is a piece that you can wear around your neck and you have someone to talk to. It's pretty much her, but not on your phone, on a pendant. Generative AI, they can help people with disabilities, with either hearing issues or vision problems, so on and so forth. So when people are starting to see how AI solutions can be applicable to their everyday life, that's where you get more buy-in, and that's where I think that we are in an AI spring, where we're going to see this like snowball effect keep growing and growing, and it's not going to go away, maybe ever again. And so I'm going to leave. I'm going to slowly close this out, but throughout history, from the caveman time to now, there have been some incredible innovations. From the time of Da Vinci, when he imagined humans could fly, and people probably thought he was delusional and crazy, we have come up with some of the most amazing discoveries known to man, to ourselves, right? People have been in space, people have flown in a metal tube in the air, people have jetpacked, we have cloned animals, we have fabricated meat in a lab, and we have helped people walk underwater and maybe even help tackle blindness from scratch and print things from 3D material in a machine. It's pretty incredible, but at one point or another, these ideas were delusional, and people found their people to create something wonderful. And so I leave you with these 3 takeaways. Delusion transmutes into vision when people come together to innovate on their imagination. Action, trial and error. Early adopters are the evangelists of new innovation for the rest of society. They are the sweet spot. Timing is everything. Some innovators require the right economic and political conditions and support to thrive in early majority to be successful in the mainstream. And one final slide, my personal thought and message to anybody listening. You have to be willing to bear the discomfort of trying and failing for the chance opportunity that you might succeed and change everything, to break things, to put them back together again, because it may be different or better or both. And you have to have the discipline to keep going while the rest of the world catches up. Thank you.
Wow, that was really nice, and thanks for collecting all these examples, because a lot of them were new for me, at least the Bowie thing. And even looked at the chat, and Rupert says like he even performed in a video game years ago as well. So it's a cool guy, and that's an understatement. And I also learned from your presentation that I was born in the same year as Photoshop. So that's interesting. That makes me feel young in a way, or old, I don't know. But thanks for all these nice insights. Yeah, and that was the final talk of today. And that brings me back to my own screen, if it works. Let me check. Never works really perfect, but maybe today it works. Yes. Okay. So, of course, I want to thank all the speakers for today. And that's Ilayda, Irlanda, Samantha, Saman, Jan-Willem, Massimo, and Érada. Thanks a lot for being part of this third edition of Speakeasy. Because, yeah, this was the third edition. We had 2 editions before, one in August and one in July. And I learned a lot about organizing these conferences. Even it's really small, it's online, etc. But still, I made a lot of mistakes in the past 2 months. And I want to do, of course, to do it better for the 4th edition. So it will come, I think, somewhere in November this year. But first, I'm going to reflect a bit on what I could do better and what I liked about this setup. But of course, want to thank all these speakers of today, but also the speakers of the first 2 editions, because you gave me the chance to start this up, and yeah, telling your stories was really nice. And for me as a host, but also for all the other people, I got lots of positive responses. Also during this one, I saw that we had more than 100 different people watching the stream. So that was awesome. And of course, the stream stays online. And the next edition, yeah, as I said, will be soon, but not next month, because I need a bit time to reflect and see what I can do better. But it's really nice to organizing all this and to meet new people, because yeah, just to be clear to everyone, I almost know no one of the speakers. Also, I didn't ask anyone myself, so everyone submitted their own talk to me. That's why I also met a lot of new people, and that was my main reason to not contact people myself, because of course I have a list of people I would contact myself, but that makes it less nice for me. I also want to meet new people, so that's why I did this via this way. Yeah, again, thanks to all the speakers, thanks to the people who joined via the live stream. Follow me or follow Speakeasy on Instagram and LinkedIn, and yeah, spread the word. I would say spread this stream, because it will stay online for quite a while. Okay, that brings me to the end of this 3rd edition. I will close the live stream now, and yeah, hope to see you at the 4th edition. I will communicate this on my socials, when and which speakers I will have. If you want to become a speaker, also let me know. So if you hear the stream, you think, I can do that as well, let me know. And yeah, we will keep in touch. Thanks, and bye-bye.